When everything falls apart. Rachel Morrison stared at the cardboard box containing 7 years of her professional life. The sleek downtown office that had been her second home now felt like a stranger's space. Her hands trembled as she packed the last photo frame showing her acceptance of the Outstanding Analyst Award just 6 months ago. Budget cuts, her manager had said that morning, unable to meet her eyes. Nothing personal, Rachel. You understand how it is. She understood perfectly. The company was downsizing, and despite her stellar performance, she was expendable. At 28, she was unemployed, and her carefully planned life was crumbling faster than she could process. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Each floor represented a memory, an achievement, a piece of the identity she had built. When the doors opened to the lobby, Rachel walked out into the bright afternoon sun, blinking back tears. She refused to cry. Not yet. Her phone buzzed insistently. Jessica Chen, her best friend since college, had been calling repeatedly. Rachel finally answered. "Jess, I know you need to talk, but today is really not good," Rachel began, her voice cracking slightly. "Rachel, please. I need help. I finally left him." Jessica's voice was barely a whisper, thick with tears. Rachel stopped walking. For the past year, she had watched helplessly as Jessica's boyfriend transformed from charming to controlling to dangerous. They had planned Jessica's escape carefully, but Rachel had expected to have her steady income to support the plan. "Where are you right now?" Rachel asked, already changing direction toward the subway. "At that coffee shop near your place." "Rachel, I have nothing." He controlled all the accounts. "I need somewhere to stay and money to get back on my feet." "I know it is too much to ask." Rachel thought about her savings account. She had been careful, responsible, saving for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency, even if it was not her own. "Come to my apartment. We will figure this out together," Rachel said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. That evening, sitting in her small apartment with Jessica safely beside her, Rachel did the calculations. Helping her friend meant nearly emptying her savings. Job hunting could take months in this market. Her rent was due in 2 weeks. "I can get a temporary job," Rachel said, scrolling through employment websites on her laptop. "Something to cover basics while I look for real positions." "Like what?" Jessica asked, guilt evident in her voice. "Rachel, I cannot let you destroy your life for me." "You are not destroying anything. I am choosing to help someone I love." Rachel clicked on a listing that made her pause. "Here is something. Night shift cleaning crew at Coal Industries. The pay is surprisingly good." Jessica looked skeptical. "You have a master's degree in finance. You should not be scrubbing floors." "Pride does not pay rent," Rachel replied, already filling out the application. "It is temporary. Besides, night shifts mean I can job hunt during the day." The unexpected encounter. 3 weeks later, Rachel had settled into a routine she never imagined. Days were filled with job applications and interviews that led nowhere. Nights meant donning a blue uniform and cleaning the offices of people who probably earned more in a day than she made in a month. Coal Industries occupied one of the most prestigious buildings downtown. The company, run by 30-year-old CEO Brandon Cole, had revolutionized tech solutions for small businesses. Rachel had actually analyzed their stock performance in her previous job, impressed by their growth strategy. Now she was cleaning their bathrooms. The building supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, assigned Rachel to the executive floors. "They are mostly empty at night," she explained. "The big shots leave by 7. Just keep everything spotless." Rachel found the work oddly meditative. The silence of the empty offices gave her space to think, to process everything that had happened. She was wiping down the conference room windows when she noticed financial reports left on the table. Old habits died hard. Rachel found herself analyzing the numbers, noticing patterns and potential problems. Coal Industries was planning an expansion into the Canadian market, but their approach had significant flaws. Any first-year business student could see they were underestimating currency fluctuation impacts and overestimating initial demand. They are going to lose millions if they proceed with this timeline, Rachel muttered, unable to help herself. And what would you suggest instead? Rachel spun around, nearly dropping her cleaning supplies. A tall man stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with intense curiosity. Even in casual clothes, dark jeans and a fitted gray sweater, he radiated authority. His dark brown hair was slightly messy, and his blue eyes held a mixture of amusement and genuine interest. Brandon Cole. She recognized him from business magazines. "I apologize, sir," Rachel stammered, her face flushing. "I should not have been looking at confidential documents. I was just cleaning and they were there, and I have a background in finance, so I automatically noticed the numbers and I will forget everything I saw." She was rambling. Rachel forced herself to stop talking. Brandon stepped into the room, studying her with unsettling focus. "You have a background in finance?" "Had. I used to work as a financial analyst for Morrison & Associates." Rachel straightened her spine, trying to maintain some dignity despite her cleaning uniform. "Before budget cuts. And you are working night shifts cleaning offices because bills do not care about your credentials," Rachel replied, defensive. "Some of us do not have trust funds to fall back on." Instead of looking offended, Brandon smiled. "Fair point. But you were saying our Canadian expansion strategy is flawed. Elaborate." Rachel hesitated. This felt like a trap. But the analyst in her could not resist. "Your projections assume stable currency exchange, but the Canadian dollar has shown significant volatility over the past 18 months. You are also launching in winter, which historically shows lower adoption rates for new tech services in that market. If you wait until spring and adjust your pricing model to account for exchange rate fluctuations, you could increase your success probability by at least 30%. Brandon pulled out his phone and started typing. "What else?" For the next 20 minutes, Rachel forgot she was supposed to be cleaning. She outlined problems with vendor agreements, pointed out gaps in market research, and suggested alternative approaches to customer acquisition. Brandon listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed he actually understood complex financial concepts. "You are wasting your talent scrubbing floors," Brandon said finally. "Thank you for the observation," Rachel replied dryly. "I will add that insight to my resume." Brandon laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face. "I have a proposition for you. If this is the part where you offer me an actual job, I should mention I am extremely qualified and will negotiate hard on salary." "Not exactly," Brandon said, his expression turning serious. "I need a girlfriend." Rachel blinked. "Excuse me?" "A fake girlfriend," Brandon clarified quickly. "For 3 months. Public appearances, some events, nothing inappropriate. I will pay you enough to solve your immediate financial problems and then some." Rachel stared at him, convinced she had misheard. "You want to pay me to pretend to date you?" "Yes." "Why?" Brandon ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable for the first time. "The media has decided I am undateable. Every relationship ends badly, gets photographed badly, or both. It is affecting business. Investors want stability. Board members want reassurance that I am not going to cause a scandal. I need someone who will not actually expect a relationship, who understands this is a business arrangement." "And you think a janitor is the perfect fake girlfriend?" Rachel asked incredulously. "I think an intelligent woman who clearly needs money and is honest enough to analyze problems out loud is perfect," Brandon corrected. "You do not care about my wealth or status. You barely seem to like me. That authenticity is exactly what I need." Rachel should have said no immediately. It was crazy, potentially humiliating, and definitely outside her comfort zone. But she thought about Jessica sleeping on her couch, about the mounting bills, about the job interviews that led nowhere. "How much are we talking?" Rachel asked. Brandon named a figure that made her dizzy. It was more than she had made in 6 months at her previous job. 3 months, Rachel said slowly. Purely professional. No actual romance. Purely professional, Brandon agreed. And when it ends, you help me get a real job. Use your connections. Brandon extended his hand. Deal. Rachel shook it, sealing the strangest agreement of her life. She had no idea that agreeing to fake date Brandon Cole would lead to the most real relationship she had ever experienced. But first, they would have to survive their first public appearance without killing each other. Based on the way they were already arguing about logistics, that might be harder than any business deal either of them had ever negotiated. Learning the rules. Rachel stood in front of her closet the following Friday, staring at clothes that suddenly seemed completely inadequate. Tonight was her first public appearance with Brandon Cole, and nothing she owned screamed, girlfriend of a tech billionaire. You look terrified, Jessica observed from the doorway, holding 2 coffee mugs. I am terrified, Rachel admitted. What was I thinking? I analyze spreadsheets, not social situations. I am going to embarrass him and myself. You are brilliant and capable, Jessica said firmly. And honestly, he is lucky to have you, fake or not. Rachel's phone buzzed. Brandon had sent a car to pick her up, along with a message, wear whatever makes you comfortable. You are perfect as you are. She settled on a simple navy dress that had served her well at corporate events. Not haute couture, but elegant enough. When she arrived at the restaurant, Brandon was waiting outside, looking devastating in a charcoal suit. You look beautiful, he said, and something in his voice made Rachel think he actually meant it. You clean up well yourself, Rachel replied, trying to keep things light. So what is the plan? Do we have a script? Brandon laughed. No script. Just be yourself. That is what makes this work. The restaurant, Luminaire, was exactly the kind of place Rachel had only read about in magazines. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and a wine list that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The maitre d' recognized Brandon immediately and led them to a prominent table by the window. Everyone is staring, Rachel whispered as they sat down. Let them, Brandon said calmly. That is the point. We are giving them something to talk about. The disaster strikes. Dinner started smoothly. Brandon proved surprisingly easy to talk with, asking genuine questions about her previous career and seeming actually interested in her answers. Rachel found herself relaxing, almost forgetting they were performing for an audience. Then the wine arrived. The sommelier presented an expensive bottle with the kind of reverence usually reserved for historical artifacts. As he poured, Rachel reached for her water glass and accidentally knocked it over. Cold water spread across the white tablecloth, heading straight for Brandon's lap. Oh no! Rachel grabbed her napkin, trying to stop the flood. Brandon stood quickly, but not quickly enough. His expensive suit pants were soaked. I am so sorry, Rachel said, mortified. She grabbed more napkins, dabbing frantically at the wet fabric, not thinking about where exactly she was dabbing until she heard Brandon's sharp intake of breath. Rachel looked up and realized with horror that she was essentially patting down the front of Brandon's pants in full view of the entire restaurant. Every diner had stopped eating to watch. She could hear the distinctive clicks of phone cameras. I was just trying to help, Rachel said weakly, stepping back. Brandon's face was an interesting shade of red. I know. It is fine. Maybe we should just go. But it was too late. By the time they left the restaurant, photos were already appearing online. The headlines were mortifying: Cole's mystery woman gets handsy at dinner, and new romance heats up fast. In the car, Rachel covered her face with her hands. I have destroyed your reputation in one dinner. You should fire me. Rachel, look at me, Brandon said gently. When she peeked through her fingers, he was smiling. This is actually perfect. Perfect. I just made us look like we cannot keep our hands off each other in public. Exactly. Nobody will question if this relationship is real now. Brandon pulled out his phone, scrolling through social media. Look at these comments. Everyone thinks we are adorable. The company's stock actually went up. Rachel stared at him. You are insane. Possibly, Brandon agreed. But admit it, that was more memorable than any perfectly choreographed date would have been. The real work begins. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and Brandon settled into their arrangement. Public appearances became easier, though Rachel insisted they avoid restaurants with white tablecloths. But something unexpected was happening in private too. Brandon started asking for her opinion on business decisions. At first, Rachel thought he was just being polite. But then he actually implemented her suggestions, and they worked. The Canadian expansion launched in spring with adjusted pricing, exactly as she had recommended. Early results exceeded projections. You should be working for me legitimately, Brandon said one evening as they reviewed quarterly reports in his office. They had started meeting there after her cleaning shifts, ostensibly to coordinate their public appearances but increasingly to discuss actual business. You are paying me to be your fake girlfriend, not your consultant, Rachel reminded him. What if I paid you to be both? Rachel looked up from the spreadsheet she had been analyzing. Brandon, that blurs too many lines. Maybe the lines need to be blurred, he said quietly. Before Rachel could respond, his office door opened. A stunning blonde woman walked in without knocking, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. Brandon, darling, I heard you were working late, the woman said, then noticed Rachel. Oh. You have company. Olivia, Brandon stood, his tone notably cooler. This is Rachel Morrison. Rachel, this is Olivia Grant. Rachel recognized the name. Olivia Grant, fashion industry executive, came from old money, and according to gossip sites Rachel had admittedly checked, Brandon's most serious ex-girlfriend. The cleaning girl turned girlfriend, Olivia said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. How very pretty woman of you, Brandon. Olivia, Brandon's voice held a warning. I am just saying, it is quite the fairy tale, Olivia continued, examining her perfect manicure. I am sure it has nothing to do with that journalist who has been asking questions about your relationship timeline. Rachel felt her stomach drop. What journalist? Oh, you have not heard. Olivia's smile widened. Thomas Wright from Metropolitan Insider has been investigating your relationship. Something about how convenient it is that you started working here just before you started dating. He is calling it a publicity stunt. After Olivia left with an air kiss for Brandon and a dismissive nod for Rachel, the room felt heavy with unspoken concerns. How much does he actually know? Rachel asked. Brandon loosened his tie, looking tired. I do not know. But Olivia would not have mentioned it unless she thought it could cause problems. Problems for you, Rachel clarified. I am expendable. You are the CEO. Stop saying that, Brandon said sharply. You are not expendable, Rachel. Not to the company, and definitely not to me. The intensity in his voice made Rachel's heart skip. This was dangerous territory. They were supposed to be faking a relationship, not developing real feelings. Brandon, we need to be realistic, Rachel said carefully. If this journalist exposes us, your reputation suffers. The board will question your judgment. Investors might lose confidence. And what about you? Brandon moved closer. What do you lose? Nothing I have not already lost, Rachel replied, trying to sound pragmatic. I came into this with nothing to protect. You are wrong, Brandon said softly. You came into this with your integrity, your intelligence, and your dignity. I will not let some gossip journalist take that from you. When everything changes. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Rachel was working her regular cleaning shift when she overheard Brandon on a conference call in his office. She had not meant to eavesdrop, but his frustrated tone caught her attention. "No, the projections are wrong," Brandon was saying. "We cannot commit to those numbers." Rachel knew immediately what he was talking about. She had seen the preliminary reports for the European expansion. The team had made the same mistakes they had made with Canada, but worse. They were about to commit to a deal that would cost the company millions. Without thinking, Rachel wrote a quick analysis on her notepad, outlining the problems and solutions. She left it on Brandon's desk and went back to cleaning. The next morning, her phone rang at 7 a.m. "Brandon. How did you know?" he asked without preamble. "About the European deal. I saw the reports last week while cleaning." "Brandon, you cannot sign that contract. The currency hedging alone will destroy your margins, and they are underestimating the regulatory compliance costs by at least 40%. Can you come to the office? Now. I am supposed to be job hunting this morning. Rachel, I need you here. Please." 2 hours later, Rachel was sitting in a conference room with Brandon and his executive team, still wearing jeans and a sweater, presenting an alternative strategy for European expansion. The executives, all men in expensive suits, listened with varying degrees of skepticism. "Who is she again?" one asked Brandon. "Someone smarter than all of us combined," Brandon replied. "Listen to her." When Rachel finished, the room was silent. Then the CFO started asking questions, real questions, that showed he understood exactly how valuable her analysis was. "We need to hire you," the CFO said finally. "Officially. Director of Strategic Analysis, reporting directly to Brandon." Rachel looked at Brandon, who was smiling. "What do you say? Ready for a real job? What about our arrangement?" Rachel asked. "What about it?" Brandon met her eyes. "Maybe it is time we stopped pretending and made this real." Rachel's heart raced. "Brandon, you do not mean that. This is just the relief talking, the excitement of solving a business problem. Is it?" Brandon stood, addressing his executives. "Everyone out. Now. We need the room." When they were alone, Brandon moved to stand in front of Rachel. "I have spent 2 months pretending to date you. Do you know what I have learned?" Rachel shook her head, not trusting her voice. "That I was not pretending at all. Every dinner, every conversation, every moment we have spent together, it has been real for me. You are real, Rachel. You are brilliant and honest and you make me want to be better. So yes, I mean it. Let us stop pretending." "You are my boss now," Rachel said weakly. "That is complicated." "Life is complicated," Brandon replied. "But this, us, it feels like the simplest thing in the world." Rachel wanted to believe him. But Olivia's warning about the journalist echoed in her mind. What about Thomas Wright? What if he exposes everything? "Then we tell the truth," Brandon said. "That we started as a business arrangement and fell in love anyway. That is not a scandal, Rachel. That is just a good story." Rachel laughed despite herself. "You make it sound so easy." "It can be, if you let it." Brandon took her hand. "Rachel Morrison, will you be my real girlfriend? No contract, no timeline, just us figuring this out together." Rachel thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. Losing her job, helping Jessica, taking a cleaning position, meeting Brandon. Every disaster had led her exactly where she needed to be. "Yes," Rachel said, smiling. "But I have conditions." "Of course you do," Brandon laughed. "I want that director position on my own merits, not because I am dating you. And if we break up, I keep my job. Deal. Anything else? Teaching you to cook actual food instead of living on takeout." Brandon pulled her close. "I can accept those terms. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the careful, performative kisses they had shared for cameras. This was real, messy, perfect. Rachel felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. They broke apart when someone knocked on the conference room door. The CFO poked his head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but that journalist is in the lobby. He says he has questions about your relationship timeline and he is not leaving until he gets answers." Rachel and Brandon looked at each other. This was the moment of truth. "Let him in," Brandon said, squeezing Rachel's hand. "Time to tell our story. Facing the truth." Thomas Wright was everything Rachel had imagined an investigative journalist would be: sharp eyes, expensive suit slightly rumpled from too many hours chasing stories, and a recording device he placed on the conference table with deliberate precision. "Thank you for seeing me," Thomas said, settling into a chair across from Rachel and Brandon. "I have been trying to get this interview for weeks." "We have been busy actually running a company," Brandon replied coolly. "What exactly do you want to know?" Thomas opened a folder, spreading documents across the table. Rachel recognized employment records, photos of her entering the building in her cleaning uniform, time-stamped security footage. "I want to know the truth about your relationship," Thomas said. "My sources tell me Miss Morrison was hired by Evergreen Cleaning Services 3 weeks before she first appeared publicly as your girlfriend." Convenient timing. Rachel felt her stomach tighten, but Brandon remained calm. "What are you implying?" "I am not implying anything. I am stating facts." Thomas pushed a document forward. "According to payroll records, Miss Morrison is paid by Coal Industries through a consulting agreement separate from her cleaning job. The amount is substantial, enough to suggest this relationship is more transactional than romantic." "You have been investigating my private business dealings?" Brandon's voice turned cold. "That borders on corporate espionage, Thomas." "It is journalism," Thomas corrected. "And it is relevant when a CEO uses a fake relationship to manipulate public perception and potentially mislead investors about his personal stability." Rachel found her voice. "What do you want? Money to kill the story?" Thomas looked genuinely offended. "I am not looking for a payoff, Miss Morrison. I am looking for the truth. If your relationship is real, tell me how it started. Make me believe it." Rachel and Brandon exchanged glances. This was the moment they had to decide: keep lying or risk everything with honesty. "You are right," Rachel said, surprising both men. "It started as an arrangement." "Rachel," Brandon began, but she squeezed his hand. "Let me finish." Rachel looked directly at Thomas. "Brandon needed someone to help rehabilitate his public image. I needed money to help my best friend escape an abusive relationship. We made a business deal, 3 months of public dating in exchange for financial security." Thomas leaned forward, his recording device capturing every word. "So it was fake." "It started as fake," Rachel continued. "But something neither of us expected happened. We actually got to know each other. Not the versions we presented to the public, but who we really are. I saw a man who works 18-hour days not because he is greedy but because he genuinely cares about the company he built and the people who work for him. He saw a woman who was struggling but refused to let circumstances define her worth." "That is a nice story," Thomas said skeptically. "But how do I know you are not just saying what I want to hear?" Brandon spoke up. "Because we have nothing to gain by telling you this. If you publish that our relationship started as a business arrangement, it damages both of us. Rachel's professional reputation gets questioned before she has even properly started her new position. My judgment gets scrutinized by the board. We are being honest because the truth matters more than the optics." Thomas studied them both carefully. "You really fell for each other." "Against all logic and good sense, yes," Rachel admitted. "I fell in love with him. And I fell in love with her," Brandon added. "The way she analyzes problems, the way she laughs at my terrible jokes, the way she calls me out when I am being an arrogant CEO. None of that was in our contract, Thomas. That happened because real connection does not follow a business plan. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then reached forward and turned off his recording device. Off the record? Brandon nodded warily. My wife and I met at a bar the night after I was fired from my first journalism job, Thomas said. She bought me a drink because I looked pathetic. We spent the whole night talking, and somewhere around 3 in the morning, I told her I loved her. She thought I was drunk and crazy. He smiled at the memory. We have been married 12 years now. Sometimes the best relationships start in the strangest ways. Rachel felt hope flutter in her chest. So you are not going to publish the story? Oh, I am definitely publishing a story, Thomas said, making her hope plummet. But it is going to be about two people who found something real in an unusual situation. Not a scandal, just an honest look at modern relationships. With your permission, of course. Why would you do that? Brandon asked suspiciously. Because I am tired of writing stories that tear people down, Thomas admitted. And because I think what you two have is actually news worth sharing. Real love does not always start with violins and roses. Sometimes it starts with a business proposal and becomes something neither person expected. The board's decision. The article published 3 days later under the headline, When Fake Becomes Real, The Unconventional Love Story of Brandon Cole and Rachel Morrison. Thomas had written it beautifully, focusing on the authenticity of their connection while acknowledging the unusual beginning. Public reaction was mixed but mostly positive. Social media exploded with comments about how refreshing it was to see honesty instead of a carefully curated fairy tale. But the board of directors was less charmed. This is unacceptable, board member Richard Hammond declared at the emergency meeting called the day after publication. You paid someone to pretend to be your girlfriend, then hired her for an executive position. That is a conflict of interest at minimum, possibly fraud. Rachel sat beside Brandon, trying to maintain her composure. She had been invited to the meeting as the subject of discussion, though she felt more like she was on trial. Rachel was hired based on her qualifications, Brandon said firmly. Her analysis saved this company millions on the European expansion. Every executive in this room agreed she deserved that position before they knew about our personal relationship. A personal relationship that started as a transaction, another board member, Patricia Winters, pointed out. How do we explain that to investors? With the truth, Rachel spoke up, drawing everyone's attention. Brandon needed help with his public image. I needed money for a legitimate emergency. We created a mutually beneficial arrangement with clear terms and boundaries. What happened afterward, the real feelings that developed, that was unexpected but not wrong. You do not think it is wrong to essentially become a paid escort? Richard's tone was condescending. Rachel felt anger flash through her. I think it is wrong to reduce a complex situation to the most insulting interpretation possible. I was never paid for anything inappropriate. I was paid to attend events, smile for cameras, and help Brandon present a stable public image. In the process, we discovered we were compatible. That is not a scandal. That is just life being messy and surprising. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying Rachel with new interest. You have a backbone. I respect that. The question remains, Richard continued, whether we can trust Brandon's judgment moving forward. This shows impulsive decision-making and poor risk assessment. Actually, Patricia interrupted, this shows creative problem-solving and the ability to recognize talent in unexpected places. Miss Morrison's work on the European contract proved her value. The Canadian expansion she advised on is exceeding all projections. From a pure business standpoint, Brandon's judgment has been excellent. You are defending this? Richard looked shocked. I am defending results, Patricia said coolly. Personal relationships are complicated. I care about whether they affect company performance. So far, the evidence suggests Miss Morrison has been an asset, not a liability. The debate continued for another hour, but gradually the tide turned in Brandon and Rachel's favor. Several board members admitted that the publicity from Thomas's article had actually increased public interest in coal industries. Stock prices had stabilized after an initial dip. Most importantly, Rachel's strategic recommendations were producing measurable positive results. Finally, Patricia called for a vote. All in favor of allowing Miss Morrison to retain her position and permitting her relationship with Brandon to continue without board interference. 7 hands went up. Only Richard and 1 other member abstained. Motion passes, Patricia declared. Now can we please get back to actually running this company? The real beginning. That evening, Rachel and Brandon stood on the rooftop of his building, looking out at the city lights. The stress of the past weeks had left them both exhausted but also strangely exhilarated. "We survived," Rachel said, leaning against the railing. "We did more than survive," Brandon replied, putting his arm around her. "We won." "Did we? Your board barely tolerates me. Half the internet thinks I am a gold digger. And I still cannot believe I am dating my boss." Brandon turned her to face him. "You are not dating your boss. You are dating a man who is constantly amazed by your intelligence and courage. The fact that we work together is just logistics." Rachel smiled despite her concerns. "Logistics. Is that what we are calling it? We can call it whatever you want, as long as you keep showing up." Brandon pulled her closer. "Rachel, I know this has been hard. The scrutiny, the judgment, the constant questions about whether we are real. But I have never been more certain of anything in my life. This is real. You are real. Us is real." "I know," Rachel said softly. "I just worry about what happens when the excitement fades. What if you realize I am just a woman who used to clean your office? Then I will remind you that you are also the woman who saved my company millions, who challenges me to be better, who laughs at my terrible cooking attempts, and who I cannot imagine my life without." Brandon kissed her forehead gently. "You are not just anything, Rachel. You are everything." Tears pricked Rachel's eyes. "When did you get so good with words?" "I had a good teacher," Brandon smiled. "You have been teaching me that honesty is more powerful than any carefully crafted image. That vulnerability is strength, not weakness. That the best things in life often come from the biggest risks." Rachel thought about the journey that had brought them here. Losing her job, helping Jessica, taking a cleaning position, agreeing to a crazy fake relationship proposal. Every choice had felt uncertain at the time, but each had led her to this moment. "I love you," Rachel said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "That is not part of any contract or arrangement. That is just the truth." "I love you too," Brandon replied. "And I have a proposal." Rachel laughed. "Another one?" "The last one worked out pretty well. This one is different." Brandon pulled a small box from his pocket. Rachel's breath caught. "Brandon, we have only been officially together for a few months." "I know. Which is why this is not an engagement ring." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small key pendant. "It is a key to my apartment. I want you to move in with me. Not because it is convenient or makes good optics, but because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. Because I want our lives to be truly intertwined, not just for show." Rachel touched the pendant gently. "That is a big step." "Only if you are ready," Brandon said quickly. "No pressure, no timeline. Just an invitation to build a real life together." Rachel thought about her small apartment where Jessica was now thriving, having found a new job and new confidence. She thought about the cleaning uniform she no longer needed to wear, though she had kept it as a reminder of where she had been. She thought about all the reasons this could be complicated and difficult. Then she thought about all the reasons it could be wonderful. "Yes," Rachel said, smiling through happy tears. "I want to build a real life with you." As Brandon fastened the necklace around her neck, Rachel realized that sometimes the best stories do not start with once upon a time. Sometimes they start with a desperate need and an unexpected proposal. Sometimes they involve spilled water, embarrassing photos, and investigative journalists. Sometimes love is messy and complicated and nothing like the fairy tales suggest. And sometimes that makes it even more perfect. 6 months later, Rachel would stand in front of a business conference, sharing her unconventional career journey from financial analyst to cleaning crew to executive director. She would talk about taking risks, finding opportunity in crisis, and the importance of being authentically yourself even when it feels safer to pretend. And in the front row, Brandon would be watching with pride, knowing that the best decision he ever made was asking a woman analyzing his financial reports while wearing a cleaning uniform if she would consider an unusual business proposal. Because sometimes desperation leads to opportunity. Sometimes fake becomes real. And sometimes the most shocking proposal turns into the most genuine love story.